So what does true operational agility look like for manufacturers in today's environment? Executives ranked increasing operational agility and efficiency as the most cited strategic priority for 2026. Agility, to me, is the ability to quickly pivot to changing demand and economic inputs. Businesses are often accurate forecasting in generalities, but rarely accurate for specific SKUs. Having flexible supply chains, be able to make modifications to product design at the last minute is really a key to operational agility. Be able to shift suppliers and manufacturing locations at a moment's notice. These are the kinds of things that you're looking for in operational agility. So what are some best practices that can be shared across the industry? Understand the risks in the supply chain, component by component. Um, this is really the only way to understand your supply chain risks at a deep level and really make an impact and ability to address. Which components are critical to your design function and pose the largest risks? Maintain a strategic supply here, but otherwise try to avoid tying up capital and inventory unless it's absolutely necessary. So knowing the components that are critical to your design functionality, those components that are really going to shut you down and be impossible to source elsewhere. These are the components you want to invest in inventory, but otherwise you want to avoid tying up too much cash because it limits your flexibility to adjust, change courses as demands change and customer requirements for product features changes. Maintaining that flexibility to pivot to changing demands, both in product requirements, geographic location of production. This is critical for operational agility in the current economic climate. So establishing supply chain solutions and the ability to design for last mile customization to meet rapidly changing customer needs and ultimately avoid and avert some of the geopolitical influences. This is where I would focus in operational agility is to maintain that flexibility and ability to adjust and respond to customer demand at the latest moment possible. So, what are the primary economic and geopolitical drivers behind reshoring? And how do we predict this will reshape the domestic manufacturing landscape in the years to come? Half of our surveyed executives say that reshoring a facility is currently in the works. In the first half of 25, Xometry saw domestic sourcing options increase more than international sourcing options, pointing to a shift towards domestic manufacturing. Certainly, instability of tariffs has been a primary driving need for onshoring to bring stability. But this only really works if the market can tolerate the price. In the short term, the move of R&D spend to onshore has been a fast mover. This eliminates the risk of constant changes, allowing new product development to proceed. However, I do expect that making long-term production decisions is going to see much greater scrutiny. So while with it R&D, there is no incumbent supply chain of already proven manufacturers, and often there is simply a greater appetite to spend a little bit more to advance in innovation, to advance the technology. I don't expect that we'll see the same when it comes to production requirements because getting a compelling cost of product put together is just as important when getting to production. Substantial tariff changes and the instability of tariffs, it completely changes the calculus for production launches. The lack of confidence that OEMs and manufacturers have today or knowledge in what the future holds with regard to with regards to import costs, it makes it nearly impossible to plan for a long-term supply chain strategy. Today, as data becomes more available, data analytics gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and we become more aware. of the landed cost of sourcing all around the globe. This is also certainly a driver of onshoring initiatives. Companies and supply chain leaders are more aware than ever about the true landed cost of the product. They're more aware than ever that when you do establish a global supply chain and you're producing offshore. This actually increases the need for inventory. It ties up additional cash in inventory, and it actually limits the ability to be agile and to shift to changing market demands and product requirement requests. Inventory is great often, and it can help de-risk supply chains, and certainly it can carry you through periods of uncertainty, but it can also be an enemy to you if your demands are shifting and the inventory that you've invested in is no longer the right inventory. So, what are the most common blind spots companies have when it comes to preparing for supply chain disruption? So, about a third of executives feel very prepared for a supply chain disruption, while the majority feel only somewhat prepared. Over-reliance on one supplier or one region can really make supply chains vulnerable. Oftentimes, in the interest of driving to the most competitive cost position, it becomes enticing to consolidate spend with a single supplier to drive the negotiation and get to the lowest negotiated cost. And organizations can often lose sight of the risks of a sole source supply chain, the inherent supply chain disruption risk that comes with it, and actually the greater costs it can have when you put yourself in a position to not be able to scale or pace with changing demands in the market. So, what I recommend, what I always propose, and what I've done in prior business continuity plans, and planning for supply chain disruptions is really know your supply chain at a deep level. Have leaders that are responsible for different commodities in different regions that understand at a deep level each component on the bill of material and the risks that they're exposed to. Where are the suppliers located in the world? What natural disaster risks are they exposed to? What currency fluctuation risks in that particular region? What geopolitical risks exist? Planning for supply chain disruption part by part is really the only way you can protect your products and entire bill of materials and ensure that there is no supply chain disruption. So, how can the industry as a whole address this? As I mentioned earlier, the need to understand at a deep level risks in the supply chain component by component. What can easily be resourced versus what is critical to your design functionality? I do recommend investing in strategic inventory positions in these critical design components, while I also recommend being very cautious and careful about tying up too much cash in inventory where designs may need to change or if the component can be easily resourced. Uh, Investing in multiple supply chain solutions wherever possible, multiple geographies, multiple suppliers, having alternate items on the bill of materials whenever possible. These are the types of things that you can build inherently into the design and give manufacturers the options to select from alternate suppliers or components to ensure that business continuity is always there or supply chain continuity is always there in the event of disruptions for any particular reason. So what is the most important step when creating a business continuity plan? So three-quarters of executives report having a business continuity plan in place in case of supply chain disruption. The necessity here is, as I've mentioned previously, is having this deep understanding of risks, geopolitical risks, risk of Mother Nature. Where do you sit in the supply chain priority of your suppliers in the event of a demand increase and a supply constraint? If you're using a supplier that also serves some of the world's largest, biggest players, do you understand what priority you actually have in the supply chain in that environment? You may find that the biggest players in the world get total priority, and you're sit waiting for months, if not longer, for the parts that you need that are critical to your design. Having this knowledge and understanding of single points of failure and having a plan in place across internal manufacturing and across the supply base is essential for business continuity. Having sourcing options in place can prevent costly delays caused by supply chain disruption. So having that redundancy of supply chains built in with alternate suppliers, with alternate components called out on the bill of materials is really what enables business continuity. Having facilities and suppliers in geographies that are not subject to the same natural disaster risks or the same geopolitical risks is critical to your supply chain continuity and supply chain risks. Many companies have a playbook, and as I stated earlier, many executives report having a business continuity plan in place. But I will say, as I've spent time with many suppliers and I've spent, 20 years myself in industry, oftentimes what this equates to is a series of folders or a binder with a script that calls out what to do in the event of a pandemic or in the event of a natural disaster. But rebuilding manufacturing competencies can take months or years. Having business continuity built into your operations and supply chain strategy is really where you want to be. This is what will truly ensure business continuity. A business continuity plan often gives you a playbook to start rebuilding your capabilities, but unless you already have it inherently built in the way you operate and execute your business on a day-to-day basis, likelihood is that the business continuity plans that exist today will not ensure business continuity. So what is the most important thing manufacturers can do to ensure success in 2026? Build a more resilient supply chain with flexible production capacity that can scale up or down as needed and improve supplier visibility, and diversify your networks. Supply chain resilience is absolutely paramount. Having the operational agility to rapidly respond to shifting demand patterns and customer needs, closely manage your cash flow to be able to shift and invest as opportunities present themselves. Know your parts that are critical to your design function. Invest in strategic supply chains there or strategic inventories where absolutely necessary, but don't let that be your only strategy. Have multiple suppliers in the wings. Have alternative components selected, pre-selected to support the demand. Invest in inventory only as a last resort to protect your most critical components, but don't tie up so much cash that you can't be nimble and adjust to changing demands in the market. So how does partnering with Xometry help manufacturers have the operational agility they need to succeed in 2026 and beyond? Well, Xometry solves so many of the challenges in supply chain and business continuity that we've discussed today. Challenges that impact businesses' continuity and supply chains. With Xometry, supply continuity is effectively built in. We manage the vast network of suppliers. We manage the quality and control the quality of their outputs. We're not subject to the same inherent risks of a single manufacturer in a single geography. We have the ability to shift and rapidly requalify production in the event of any natural disaster, any shift in geographic location desired, production, for production when import costs change, or frankly, if you change your manufacturing strategy and you decide you want to move your facility and your manufacturing to closer to the end customer to de-risk the supply chain and ensure that you're building in country for the country that you're serving. Xometry is really at the ready to help you do that and localize your supply chain and ensures that you always have alternatives to the critical components in your bill of material. Um, with Xometry, you always need to worry about supply chain continuity, but with Xometry, you know that you have a team, an organization, and a network of suppliers so strong that it's one less thing to worry about. Our model provides an inherently resilient supply chain.